What's up, everybody? Tosan here with a hunter damage guide, a marksmanship hunter damage guide to be precise. So I've been getting asked for this guide a lot lately. I think I actually made one back in the day. I'm not totally sure, but I've been getting asked a lot to make this video, so here it is. As far as damage for Marksman Hunter, it's not rocket science. In fact, most damage rotations in this expansion are pretty simplistic, but I can definitely see where there's some confusion. So the point of this video is you probably already have the gist of it, but you know, maybe you're not totally sure if you're doing things right, so hopefully this video should clear that up for you. So, as far as damage priority goes, it's pretty simple. You're attacking something until you get a mark shot proc. Now, let's say you're playing the single target build with trick shot. In arena, I don't usually take lone wolf because you want the mortal strike from your pet, so either of these talents is fine, but for the most part, I do take trick shot and lock and load, and then sometimes sidewinders depending on the comp I'm playing or the matchup. So for the arcane shot build, what you usually want to do is, and I also usually take Murder of Crows, not volley, but Murder of Crows is just something that you don't have to be too specific about. I would just say once you land your trap, just pop Murder of Crows on your kill target, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter when you use it specifically. It's not a super strong cooldown. It's fine though to just pop it every time you land a trap if it's up. But anyway, so you want to attack until you get a mark shot proc, right? Simply put, you arcane shot, you mark shot, and then you start aim shotting. And when you decide to pop true shot is also based on the situation. If you have a good CC chain that's going to stick, then you're going to want to, you know, pop true shot at those times. When you do enough aim shots, assuming that you're allowed to do enough aim shots, and of course just use your lock and load procs as you get them. You don't need to save them for anything. But it's simple. You just try to keep your vulnerable up as much as you can and squeeze in some aim shots whenever you can. So it's not, again, it's not rocket science, right? This is the basic rotation is arcane shot when you get a mark shot proc. Now see here, I don't have a marking shot proc, right? Or let's say you have a gap. Every once in a while, you're going to have a gap where your auto shots don't trigger a marking proc, right? And then you're going to be like, okay, well, I can't reapply, you know, marked shot to get the vulnerable debuff, right? That's when wind burst comes in. The main uses for wind burst is either going to be, one, if you don't have a mark shot proc, or a, you know, a marking targets proc like this. Marking targets, you know, if you don't have that, and you have a lapse, and you really need to get the vulnerable on somebody, well, Wind Burst is a great filler, because with your artifact trait, Wind Burst will also apply vulnerability. So, a lot of the time I'll start my burst with this, you know, I'll run in, I'll instantly do my CC chain, I'll pop True Shot, and then I'll Wind Burst, and then I'll just spam aim shots. This is totally fine, but Wind Burst itself doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It's actually slightly weaker than an aim shot with vulnerable about halfway through. So, Wind Burst is not some crazy super strong attack. So you don't actually need to use it even in the opener. Sometimes you can if you want, and that's fine. It's a relatively short cooldown, but the main reason, or the main purposes that Wind Burst serves are either when you lack a marking shot proc and you need to put vulnerable on the target, and same if you're playing Sidewinder. Sidewinder has a relatively long cooldown, and we don't have the spray and pray talent anymore, the honor talent, to reduce that cooldown. So every once in a while you'll find yourself without a marking shot proc or, you know, Sidewinders on cooldown. That's when Wind Burst is a good filler. This will get you a very cheap vulnerable debuff and some very inexpensive damage. It's a fast cast, it's faster than aim shot, and it will apply vulnerable for a very low focus cost, and you can just start, you know, pumping aim shots afterwards, right? So, it's pretty simple. Besides using it to apply vulnerable when you need it, another good use for Wind Burst is the fact that it's really inexpensive. Consider it a very cheap aim shot. So let's say you did your marking shot, right? I'm going to dump my focus here, okay? I'm going to spend all my focus, and once I'm out of focus, let's say you're like, dang, this target is really low, but I can't afford another aim shot, right? That's a good time to use Wind Burst. If you need some really quick on-demand damage, if the target is really low and you don't have time to put up a mark shot proc, let's say your trap is about to end and the target's 10% health or 20% health, and you just, you know, don't have any instant damage, well, Wind Burst is almost instant damage. It's a very fast cast. And right now it's like a 1.35 second cast, right? But that's outside of arena. I only have 11% haste. Inside arena with our haste template, we have a lot of haste. So it's close to a 1 second cast. So it's a very quick and very inexpensive way. Just consider it a discount fast cast aim shot most of the time that also happens to apply vulnerable. So, again, Wind Burst's main purpose is as filler when you can't mark the target and you need vulnerable, or when you need to get some quick, cheap damage. Other than that, Wind Burst is not some crazy hard-hitting ability. Now, we also have this other artifact trait, of course, that will, you know, leave a trail on the ground that does damage every 1 second for 5 seconds, right? So, you know, technically, if they sit in this debuff and it ticks all 5 times, it is going to be stronger than an aim shot. The problem is the trail that it leaves on the ground is a little buggy. Sometimes people will stand right in it and it won't even tick the damage. And on top of that, it's a very narrow path, so most of the time people aren't going to stand in that for more than 1 or 2 ticks, if you're lucky even, you know what I mean? A lot of the time a target's moving. So the damage from wind burst is not like super crazy unless they're sitting in that for, you know, the entire, you know, at least 4 or 5 seconds. So again, just consider it a very cheap on-demand damage attack when you need it, especially when you're either low on focus or you don't have a vulnerable proc. Other than that, it's very simple. You pretty much just do a routine of, you know, arcane shot to proc the marking targets, pump a mark shot, use lock and loads when you have them, and otherwise just aim shot. And it's pretty simple. That's just about all you have to do. Sometimes you can do a burst like this too, or I'll wind burst and arcane shot at the end of the cast. Mark shot, it doesn't matter if you refreshed it. Sometimes this is a way to get a nice little burst in. Sometimes you can mark a target like this preemptively, right? While you're, you know, you're refreshing your marks while you're just trying to fill up your focus. And I'm gonna let the cooldown recharge real quick, but let's say you know, you did your burst or whatever, and you're filling your focus, right? And you don't want to shoot a mark shot yet. Let's say you're waiting to do a CC chain and a burst and fill your focus. So let's say I'm about to land a trap, right? And I'm spamming arcane shots. Even though I'm refreshing the marking shot proc, don't worry about wasting those. You get them a lot. So let's say you're out of focus, you already dumped your focus on aim shots, and while you're refilling your focus by spamming arcane shots, you have this marked shot waiting. So then you bursting shot, trap somebody, right? And then you can do a burst like this, wind burst and mark shot at the same time. A nice little chunk of burst comes right there, and it costs very little to no focus. By the time you do that one mark shot, if you're at full focus, you wind burst into mark shot, you're basically going to be full focus, and you can just pump like 3 aim shots after that. So that's pretty much all there is to it. When it comes to Sidewinders, it's essentially the same routine. The difference is, sometimes you can hold your mark shot proc. So let's say you get a marking shot proc, right? Well, first you can Sidewinder, and then you can shoot a few aim shots, and then at the end of it, you can then do a marking shot proc. But see, as you can see here, I'm out of focus, even though I just refreshed my, you know, vulnerable debuff, right? So a lot of people think that you should save, you know, if you want to be efficient, right? You mark. And you're going to vulnerable them by default, because Sidewinder automatically applies vulnerable without needing to shoot a marked shot, right? So a lot of people think, oh, I should do this, apply vulnerable, and save my marking targets proc, and just spam aim shots, and then at the end, refresh the mark. The problem with this is you end up with no focus left at the end, so it doesn't really matter if you save the marking shot proc, or if you use it instantly. Most of the time, what I will do is I will shoot Sidewinder and mark shot first, and then start aim shotting. Because it doesn't really matter. Even if you hold it to the end and refresh it, you're going to have to Sidewinder again anyway to get focus back. So don't trick yourself into thinking that you're being efficient by saving that marking shot proc, you know, after Sidewinder. Instead, I would suggest most of the time, unless you have a reason to hold that damage for something, most of the time you'll Sidewinder and mark shot instantly. Because it doesn't matter if you overlap and refresh that vulnerable proc. You're not going to be able to spam any extra aim shots because your focus bar will be empty. And again, if you have any downtime in between this, if you ever feel like, you know, that I should have held that mark shot proc to extend my vulnerable, besides the fact that you're going to be out of focus most of the time, again, you always have wind burst as a backup filler to apply vulnerable if for some reason, you know, your Sidewinders are on cooldown. You know, sometimes you're going to do Sidewinders back to back, right? Especially for true shotting, which is also going to reduce the cooldown because it gives you haste. But let's say you run out of Sidewinder procs really quickly because you're just, you know, pumping damage and you're cleaving. So see right here, it's on cooldown, and I'm like, oh, I don't have a marking, way to refresh the mark. Boom, fill it with a wind burst, easy. So that's pretty much it. It's not rocket science, and again, Murder of Crows you can just put up whenever you really feel like it. I wouldn't toss it out there randomly when you're pillaring and you're not really CCing the healer or doing damage. But anytime, you know, you're doing your CC chain and pumping out damage, feel free to throw up the crows. I actually like to throw up the crows before I land my trap, just because it's going to, you know, it takes a global and 30 focus to activate Murder of Crows. So I don't like using that global when I could use all my globals for bursting. So usually what I'll do is if I'm about to go up and CC somebody, I will activate Murder of Crows first, then I'll do my bursting shot trap or whatever, and then I can just use the, right after the trap lands, I can immediately go to pumping burst damage, you know, with Sidewinders or arcane shot, mark shots, and aim shots. I feel like damage rotations for the most part in Legion are pretty simplistic, but because there's so many weird mechanics with the marking targets and stuff like that, and how Sidewinder automatically puts up vulnerability, I definitely can see why there's a lot of questions and why people request this topic a lot, because it can seem confusing. And I know most people probably have the right idea already, but they're not sure they have the right idea, and they just wanted some confirmation from me. So here you have it, confirmation. You've probably been doing it right for the most part the whole time. Anyway, guys, that is it for this video. I hope some of you found it useful. I will be uploading plenty more guides for DK, Rogue, and Hunter, as well as a lot of high-rated gameplay, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching, and peace out.